Hello and welcome to the Nintendo Power Retrospectives. I'm Count Zero. This time we have Nintendo Power number 32 for January of 1992. Nintendo Power is shaking things up a bit this time, so we've got some new stuff to discuss. Let's get started. Our cover game for this issue is Super Castlevania IV from Konami. I think this is our first cover that is an oil painting as opposed to a more conventional, just regular painting, or a photograph or a diorama. In the letters column, well, after all the reader-submitted art covered last issue, this week we're getting more into that with sculptures and sewn plush figures, what have you. Our next game is our next Mega Man game. Mega Man 4, now with a new villain, Dr. Cossack. Well, actually not really Dr. Cossack, because Dr. Cossack is really a proxy for Dr. Wily. We have level maps for all the Robot Masters, but they don't really give a boss order. There's kind of an implied boss order based on what order the maps are done in, but it's not explicitly stated. We also don't get maps of Dr. Cossack's castle or Dr. Wily's castle. Now, Mega Man 4 and the rest of the series after this starts getting some crap for being too easy. In particular with this game, I've heard it get crap for, well, the charge shot. I disagree. I think this game has the right amount of challenge, and it's certainly a fun game. It doesn't change things up too much from the first few Mega Man games, aside from giving you the rush boost at the beginning, but I wouldn't call that a significant negative. I mean, if you didn't like the Mega Man games before, I don't think Mega Man 4 will turn you into a convert, which is the kind of thing where if the game was too easy is something where if you found the games too hard, you might like this one, but if you like the Mega Man games, you're still going to like this one. If you don't like the Mega Man games, you're still not going to like this one. Pretty straightforward, pretty clear cut. Still, I consider it fun. I think if you haven't made up your mind yet, it's worth your time and attention. Moving on, we have a game from Konami with Monster in My Pocket, based on a line of small plastic cast collectible toys. We have maps of the first 3 stages of the game. Monster in My Pocket is a little interesting, in that from a gameplay standpoint, it's kind of a combination of Kung Fu with platforming elements. You have massive hordes of enemies attacking from the front and back as you move forward, with some platforming upwards and downwards, and leading you to constantly attack as you make your way through the level until you reach the end and fight a boss. Now this game isn't particularly deep by any means, but it's still enjoyable, certainly. I don't know if I'd call it a hidden gem. I might consider calling it that, considering the fact that it's a game where the reputation of games based off fairly little-known licensed toy properties like this are poor, and consequently I expected this to kind of be shovelware, even though it came from Konami. But instead, it's a very entertaining game, and honestly, if I came across a copy of this and the price was right, I'd certainly pick up a copy. Sticking with some of the big names, next up is Tecmo with Tecmo Super Bowl. Rather than focusing on the team roster, instead the article covers the game mechanics of the thing. Tecmo Super Bowl is a decent sports game with solid passing controls, which I admit took me a bit to figure out due to how I'm playing it. The one complaint I have with the game is with the passing. There are a few occasions where I selected a receiver who was wide open, but instead of passing it straight to him, I sent it to a spot about a mile in front of him, where there were more than a couple opposing players waiting to intercept the pass. Now the game is still fun, and I certainly find it entertaining to play a full season in the game, but frankly, there are more recent football games, even on, retro consoles like the SNES, which are more polished. not just graphically, but gameplay-wise. Well, here's one of the first big changes of this issue, a new comic. A manga adaptation, though they don't call it that, of Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, by manga legend Shotaro Ishinomori, creator of such classics as Cyborg 009 and Gegege no Getaro. And I apologize for mangling those names. This manga is available from Viz in print right now as I'm recording this, so I'm not going to go too much in depth because you can actually go read this right now. Something you can't really do with, say, well, frankly, Howard and Nestor's Adventures, or the other new comic we're getting this issue, at least in terms of a semi-legal way. Anyway, this first installment sets up the first part of Link's quest, the search for the Master Sword. Now, the classified information column has also been tweaked. The portable and console sections have both been combined into one. And we also have some flubs and headers in this section, which is kind of a bummer. Of note this issue is information on the Master class in F-Zero, which you unlock by beating the first 3 classes of the game. Moving on to Game Boy titles, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, Back from the Sewers for the Game Boy, and we have maps for the first 5 stages. If Monsters in My Pocket was adapting the gameplay of Kung Fu and adding some platforming, this adds some brawler-esque depth and feel to some of the levels. It's not as blatantly easy as the first Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle Game Boy game was either, but this game has some added wrinkles that makes it less enjoyable. In particular, instead of sticking with your turtle of choice, whoever he may be, when a turtle is defeated, they are imprisoned and have to be rescued between levels. Further, your life at the end of one level carries over in between levels. Now, add to this fact that turtles have longer reaches than others in combat, some more than others, and it's not entirely intuitive. Donatello has a longer reach, certainly, but Leonardo has barely any reach at all. And further, since some bosses will counterattack you if you're too close, you get situations where you just can't beat some bosses, because the turtle you need against the boss, like Donatello, is imprisoned. Now, you can rescue imprisoned turtles in between levels, but the minigame to do so is fairly difficult and kinda not fun. Next is another licensed game with a title based on the Beetlejuice animated series, developed by Rare. We have maps of the first 2 levels of the house. Now, some minigame collections are fairly straightforward. You just do the minigames in sequence. In Beetlejuice, you have to navigate this haunted house to find each minigame, and beat them all in order to move on to the next stage. On its own, this would probably be fine. However, it's not that simple. As you make your way through the house, you also have to contend with other threats that can deal you damage, in addition to any damage you take or lives you lose from doing the minigames. Further, completing challenges doesn't get you health back or extra lives. Heck, I can't even find any way to get your health back or any extra lives for that matter, which means you have to beat each section of the mansion in one go. Next is the first version of Prince of Persia we've covered thus far, with the Game Boy port of the PC game. We have maps of the first 3 sections of the game. Now, this is a very solid version of Prince of Persia. We don't have any of the detailed backgrounds from the original game, but all of the incredibly fluid animation is still there and very clear. The controls are alright as well, considering that this is effectively a 2-button game, not including your D-pad. I kind of wonder what a Game Boy port of Another World or Out of This World would be like, or for that matter, if this game would work on the NES as well. Next up is the second of our 2 new comics, with Super Mario Adventures from Charlie Nozawa, the author of the manga Even a Monkey Can't Draw Manga. This is actually a pretty good comedy manga with some great slapstick sequences. The formatting of Counselor's Corner has been adjusted again, and I kind of like this design. It's really well formatted and the maps are done well